This is the message I want any ladies out there listening to hear. And it's no secret that we work with a lot of women in our businesses, right? It's probably, at least at my facility, it's like 80% women, 20% men. So I'm just going to speak to that for now. Women are suffering because you're too scared to work on your sales skills.
All right, welcome back, Little Jim Big Heart, my interview series, and I am here with Raychell Kosh. So I've known Rachel for a while now, and probably on and off for years. We've been kind of running in the same circles, and she caught my attention recently because she attended a sales coaching certification. I believe we call it a certification. And it's from a person, Shelby Sapp, that I've followed for years, who puts out really great content. It's very female specific. So I wanted to talk to Rachel about her experience with that, some sales lessons that she might be willing to share, and specifically from the female, fitness professional lens, which is not something that I personally have experience with, but I know a lot of people that listen and work in my company. It's always beneficial to hear things from the female lens. So, Rachel, thank you for joining me. And why don't you give a quick little background of who you are and where you came from?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Super excited to have this conversation. My name is Rachel. I have been in Delaware now for 5 years, the co-founder of 3D Personal Training with my husband, Lavelle. Our mission is to help turn Delaware into a blue zone where it's common to thrive and be active into your 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. So that's really the core of what we do. How I came into this world in the sales industry and all the things that you mentioned, being a big basketball player growing up myself, played college and overseas in Europe a few years as well, and just always gravitating more to the strength training side of things, seeing that gap, particularly for women being pushed more in the pink marketing direction of Pilates and yoga and some of those more calming, meditative forms of exercise, and realizing like, hey, things are starting to shift. Strength training is becoming more front and center for women, understanding the health benefits. How can I continue to push this movement forward in my own way?
All right, cool. So explain, how long have you had 3 and D? I don't know if I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's going on 5 years now. And truthfully, the first 3 years was a lot of juggling. I was still working in corporate, actually, for Ben Greenfield, one of the big
Yeah.
longevity biohacking experts. So I actually started selling for him first. I was the vice president of his health coaching program, and I sucked. I was terrible. I got no sales training at all. I was just thrown to the wolves and expected to figure out how to sell a $60,000 a year remote health coaching program. So luckily, no offense, Ben, I was able to get some reps in and be really bad, and then realize I needed to hire a coach or a mentor to actually show me the ropes. And that's where Shelby came in.
Yeah. So Shelby Sapp, again, I followed her for a couple of years now. Transparently, I reached out to her early on to do a podcast because I was like, hey, your content's great. I'd love to have you on. She was just too big time and probably had some, bot or something that was managing her inbox. So I doubt it ever reached her personally. But you went through her training. So what was about her that made you want to get involved with that training?
hmm I think first it's just seeing other people who have a similar life experience to yourself, who look like you, obviously being a woman, kind of speaking a similar language around, what can sales mean to us? What does that look like? It's not kind of the traditional caricature of the, slimy car salesman. Like there's another route to go down and kind of to step into that identity as a saleswoman. So that's what initially attracted me. And I think the key here is to put yourself in the buyer's shoes as much as you can. And that's what I did when I started that journey with her. So I was a little nervous at the time. It was a big investment for, where we were revenue-wise in our business. But being able to overcome those nerves and kind of take the next step and sign up and swipe my card for something that I knew was going to be a big investment in myself and have the ROI in the long term, also paid off in understanding kind of the thought process that our buyers go through during that sales process.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, this is not too much of a tangent, but one of the best things that we can do as coaches is invest in an expensive thing for ourselves.
Yes.
I think when I talk to some coaches that get a little scared about sales and they get a little nervous about the price if it's a higher ticket thing, it's because they've never paid for something like that themselves. Like if I ask any of my coaches, like, hey, how many of you guys would pay $400 a month for a trainer? Zero of them would do it. And it's going to make it really a lot harder for you to sell that because if you don't know the value, because like you just don't need it. You don't need a coach for that because they're self-motivated, they're into fitness, they like going to the gym.
Yep.
So in lieu of paying a trainer $400, you paid a sales coach. And I just think it's really, and you saw the value in it. And we don't have to talk about price, but it was probably several thousands of dollars that you paid for. And I can confidently say I've never made an investment like that did not pay for itself, um, whether it was in the actual content or understanding what's worth it and what's not in the long run and saving myself the headache in the future.
Yeah. And look, I'll be the first to admit I went to three of Shelby's webinars before I actually signed up because I went through those same patterns, limiting beliefs of I'm so nervous, like I don't know if this is gonna work, is it gonna be worth it? So just going through that exercise and coming out on the other side much more confident. And I went into the program with the lens of, look, I want to apply this to growing my business and being able to train my own sales team to sell my service. Um, and then along the way, over the year of taking the program, I think we grew over 173%. So, I mean, when you put a number on it, it was
Yeah.
just like a 10x return at least.
Yeah, just on this topic still, like again, I just can't speak highly enough about making investments in your education and in your growth. Let's say it was $5,000 for the program, really that is like one to two sales that you wouldn't have made otherwise over the course of a year, and it's paid for itself.
Yeah,
So it's like, even though sometimes people shy away from that upfront like investment, it's like when you really think of the math, it usually pays off. So it's just one thing. We're in a mastermind. We've been in mastermind groups, together in the past. Like, do not be afraid of making those investments if the maths out for, is this going to give me something that's going to produce a lifetime value greater, then it's probably worth the investment.
exactly. I'm on 100% on the same page. And look, I'm going to follow the blueprint of the people who are successful.
Yeah.
And I got the opportunity to hear Elena Cardone speak at the conference this
Yeah.
past weekend. So we're looking at a female billionaire with a B.
Yeah.
And my biggest takeaway from that talk is she spends over 50% of her income on personal development. So things like this, exactly, courses. And that's what's allowed her to just speed up that process to get to the point that she's at today. So while some of us, myself included, were shaking in our boots to make that investment, she's like, no, if this makes sense for me, I'm going. Speed.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the actual sales program. So what was the program that you went through with Shelby?
Yeah, so the program was really geared towards more higher ticket sales. So if you can sell a $5,000, $10,000 product, I mean, $300 a month just seems like a drop in the bucket
Yeah.
compared to that. So I was going for that shooting for the stars, type of approach and being able to apply that to my business. Um, Really, my biggest takeaway, I would say, was more along the mindset side of things. So learning how to celebrate the no's. Because
Love
going
that.
into sales, yeah, celebrate the no's. Um, Going into sales, having the athlete background, I know you have that yourself. We want to win, right? That's what makes it fun, getting the sign up, being able to impact someone's life. But one of the best exercises I did for my business was reverse engineering the numbers of success.
Yeah.
So what numbers do I need to hit to make it impossible to fail? If I'm converting 10% of my Facebook leads, let's say, for the sake of math, I know that I'm going to have at least 9 conversations with somebody before I get a yes.
Yeah.
So if I can retrain my brain that every no I get is like, yes. I'm so happy that they said no to me because I'm one step closer to actually impacting somebody who needs it.
I love that. And yeah, I love that because it's true. And this is what people don't avoid the reality of is facing reality. It's like, what is your close rate? It's like if it's 50%, then if you need 10 sales, you have to get through five no's if you want five yeses. There's no avoiding it until your skill improves. There is, but that fear of failure, that fear of rejection keeps people from collecting those five no's. But it's like exactly like you said, it's like get pumped about every no because based on your numbers individually, you get through enough and you're going to get a yes. Just statistically.
Yeah, it's a complete numbers game, which is kind of fun once you set up that scorecard for
Yeah.
your team as well, because we hire a lot of athletes too. It's just kind of you attract the person that you are type of
Yeah.
deal. And they love it. Just being able to, to see that win and see the numbers kind of add up in the right direction gets them in that process-oriented mindset versus the outcome-oriented mindset.
Love that. All right. So what is the like nature of this Shelby SAT program without giving away trade secrets? I mean, I'm sure, you don't want to give away too much, but what are like the things that and let's talk about this from a female lens.
Okay.
Um, what's the nature of this from a female lens with applying Shelby's program that you would want a female listener to know?
Yeah. I want all the female listeners out there to know that sales is the number one skill that you can learn and add to your toolkit. So let's put that out there right away. Um, and when you really break it down into what the interaction looks like, I think that's she does a good job of getting granular around, okay, what are the phases of the conversation? So for us, that's an in-person, we call it a roadmap. So your consultation where you're actually closing someone, right? So maybe it's that 30-minute conversation, sit down in person. What are the three areas that we're focused on where we are maintaining the frame as the authority figure in the conversation? I'm the expert, I'm qualifying you, I'm making sure this is a good fit
Can you
and
can you
just helping you
explain
make the
that
next step.
term? Can you explain that term, maintaining the frame? Because I think it's something that gets thrown around a lot, but some people might not fully understand what it means and how to apply it.
Yeah, that's a great, great question. I think it starts from the very first second that you meet that person. So, something we have ingrained in our script is, you get the small talk going, make them feel comfortable, but then you're immediately establishing, hey, look, we only have 30 minutes here together. So, I want to make sure that we're respectful of both of our times here and we make the most of it. What we're going to do is, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to see what you're struggling with, see how we can help you. And by the end of it, if it seems like a good fit for everyone involved, we're going to get you going right away so you don't have to wait a minute longer to feel like your best self. If for some reason it's not a fit, no worries. I'm going to make sure you walk out of here today feeling really good and know exactly what to do next. Does that sound good?
Yeah. So you've set the frame that you are in control.
Yes.
And that's,
Yes.
that's when they talk about frame is like the frame of mind or like if there was a photo of you, you would be framed around like I am the person in charge. A really cool way to think about this, and comes from the NLP world, is like if you zoomed out and I watched you doing a sales conversation with somebody, and I was an observer like you were in a TV screen, and I watched that conversation on mute. I should be able to tell who is in charge of that conversation. Are you a passive bystander and the prospect is drilling you with questions and whatever? Or are you leading the way and asserting control with your body language and your posture and the way you're asking questions? It's a good way for people to think about frame is like who is in control.
hmm Yeah, that's exactly it. I like to think of it in a way everyone can relate to. When I was on my flight down to Florida, and the pilot comes on the plane, and they're like, hey, look, we're gonna go through some turbulence the next 15 minutes, but it's not gonna last very long, so just buckle your seatbelts and we'll be cruising. We'll be touching down in about an hour. versus if they didn't say anything at all and you're sitting there like, oh no, like what's going on? Like something's wrong with the plane and your mind starts racing. We want to be that sense of comfort for people, knowing exactly what to expect next.
Yeah, and imagine if the pilot came on and he was like, "Are you guys okay? I know that was really scary. Are you okay?" Like you would
Yes.
freak the fuck out because you don't think the pilot's in charge.
Yes.
So, all right, you establish the frame. I want you to go through that again because it's something that we've talked about, but you just did it perfectly and beautifully. What you just did was setting expectations. So go through that scripting again because am I wrong? That's the first step of the consult process.
Yeah, that's the first step. And there's so many nuances along the way that can make or break that sale. And that's the first one, in my opinion, and what we've learned with Shelby of setting that frame, establishing the authority. You're the expert prescribing the outcome of what you're going to suggest for them at the end of the day. Um, and most people want to be led. So that's how you're walking in there, just letting them know exactly what's going to go on. You're going to be respectful of their time. So this also helps when you got the people that are, wanting to kind of lay out their whole life story. We got 30 minutes. That's all we got. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah. All right, cool. So you set the expectations for the consult. What's kind of the next part of this process that somebody could take away?
Yeah, next biggest thing is, and this is actually something that I originally thought was a weakness of mine because I'm a big introverted person. I don't get charged up by having a million conversations, but it actually turned into my superpower when it comes to sales. And I think that can apply to anyone across the board. Something you think is a weakness can actually be your superpower if you just look at it from the right perspective. But that is the 60/40 rule. So I'm going into this next section where I'm asking my probing questions and I will have success with this person if they're talking at least 60% of the time and I have my 40, right? So the more they're talking, I'm listening, I'm leaning into my introverted superpowers of kind of plucking out the next strategic question to ask them. And before you know it, they're starting to sell themselves more and more, and they're leading themselves down the trail. And I'm just there kind of like the guidelines like in the bowling alley when you put up the things on the side. I'm
Yeah.
just like guiding it to the strike.
Yeah, so it's discovery is the portion you're asking questions, you're trying to draw out what they're doing. And that's great. The 60/40 is a great ratio. Honestly, I've seen it like even if you're at 50/50, you just know you're screwing up if you're doing more of the talking. Um, I always say like whoever is asking questions has control. So
Mhm.
if they're drilling you with questions, you have lost control. So
Yes.
you always want to be the one asking the questions, and that's the way to maintain that frame. All right, so discovery is 60/40. That's a great, ratio. What happens next?
Okay, so from there, I think once you've gotten all that information, I like taking physical notes. I like them seeing that I am interpreting what they're saying to me. I'm writing it down, I'm nodding, I'm going along with the conversation. Once we've gotten through that probing section, the next critical question that I've been trained by Shelby to ask is the commitment question. So this is essentially the soft close. You're feeling things out after you've kind of summarized, hey, here's what I'm hearing from you in order to get you to this goal of feeling amazing in your bikini at your Hawaii trip. We're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. Does that sound right? Cool. Now we're going into the commitment, which is where I see a lot of things make or break in the sales process. And it's a great way to kind of close them before you're actually asking for their card. So I'm saying, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 low, 10 high, how committed are you to making a change, to making this change right now? Okay, wait, maybe they say like, I don't know, I'm at like an 8. Okay, this is the next critical part. So an 8, some people might think, all right, an 8, they're probably ready for me to close them, right? No, I'm gonna double down on that and say, okay, so why did you go with an 8 instead of like a 9 or a 6? Tell me more about that. Then I'm starting to really pull on some of those strings, and then they might say something like, you know, my kid's starting summer camp, so I'm just a little unsure if I'm going to be able to get here at that 8 o'clock time we talked about. Great. Now I can address that objection before I ask for their card.
Yeah. So you're drawing out objections in a softer way. It's not like they're like, well, my schedule's a little crazy. You're maintaining control because again, if they throw the objection at you, it's usually too late. You've lost control. Like if you're going for a close and they say, yeah, I got to think about it because my kid's schedules. But if you draw it out, you are letting them work through it themselves. So that's beautiful. I love that. Did they go through objection handling with you, like a framework for handling objections?
Yeah, that was a big um, focus of the program once we got. So there was about 3 tiers in the program. That was the third tier, I believe, where we were really just drilling the main ones, the most common ones that come up, and essentially how to address those, and realizing there's only so many objections someone can give, right?
Yeah.
So once you kind of mastered what to expect, and you can, within the probing part of the conversation we just talked about, your instinct is going to tell you which one might potentially come up based on what you're hearing, right? They're like giving you information about being a little bit of a cheaper person and wanting to save a buck. You know, they're probably going to give you a price objection. So you've seen this story before. You're having very similar conversations with similar types of people. So it becomes a lot less scary when they actually give you the objection. They're processing making a buying decision. So it's actually a good thing.
Yeah. All right, cool. Um, and is there like a way to pitch for or, close? Like how do you bring this to a close? You've gathered all the intel, what does the program tell you about like getting a close?
Yeah, I think in my experience, what I've found to work best is kind of the less is more approach.
Yeah.
If you've done all the work in the initial conversation, you've sorted through the objections, we've talked through the concerns, right? By the time, and I literally have a price sheet that I'm just kind of like showing them, by the time I'm flipping that price sheet over and showing it to you and saying, all right, I really recommend that 2 time a week option for you just to get started, but what do you think?
Yeah.
And usually at that point, 9 times at a time, they're going to say, oh, yeah, the two's good. Or they'll say, I think I could probably do the three. So
Yeah.
if you're doing that work in the beginning, that part is easy. At that point, I'm just shutting up and letting them just give me the head nod.
Yeah. It's like I say it in some of my sales podcasts, like the best way that you can end a call is like, what do you want to do? What should we do next? And let them be like, ah, I guess I should sign up. And that's how you know you've done a really fucking good job of discovery and all that. So that's kind of the overview process. To be honest, a lot of high ticket sales follows, a lot of the same scripts, a lot of the same things. What the biggest thing that I have, and I think that you probably had the same experience. I've worked with some high ticket sales coaches for my own training. I've uh, had some people like they're just in my circle that I've communicated with. The biggest thing that I have realized is we sell ticket 3 to 50 to 450 a month in the gym. These people are selling the same exact clients that I sell to at $5,000 to $10,000 packages
Hmm.
with pretty much the same process, the same script. Sometimes me even gets nervous about dropping the price or telling people the price. What I've realized is the only difference between a $5,000 sale and a $400 a month sale is the confidence and the conviction in which you speak on it and what you say it costs. And it really changed my like you can literally charge whatever you want. And if you are good enough and I mean, one, if you can actually help the person with the thing and it's the ROI is there, like if we're getting scared about 300 bucks a month and maybe we get a limiting belief that, oh, or maybe we're too expensive for the market, just know there's a guy that's doing high ticket sales selling to people just like that person for $5,000 just because they are better and more confident than you. Is that what you experienced too?
That's exactly it. And I think Shelby has a good example where she's like, look, when you go to a coffee shop and you're buying your regular order, the person's going to say, okay, that's 15.98, right? There's no question in their voice. There's no
Yeah.
negotiating the price. It just is what it is. That's the price. So I'm going to tell you what the price is, and you're going to hand me your card, and that's it. The transaction's done. So I think that's a big piece of it, just understanding exactly like you said, how to say it.
Yeah. So I think this is also where Shelby like really speaks to the female seller. As a female, I mean, how do you go into that with the utmost confidence? Like, what would you want to say to another female? Would you say that you came out with more confidence in selling higher ticket stuff?
Yes,
What was the
absolutely.
switch? What was the switch for you in that?
The switch for me was realizing that, and this is the message I want any ladies out there listening to hear. And it's no secret that we work with a lot of women in our businesses, right? It's probably, at least at my facility, it's like 80% women, 20% men. So I'm just going to speak to that for now. Women are suffering because you're too scared to work on your sales skills. Like, women are suffering because you're too scared to work on your sales skills. And that was my light bulb moment
What do
because
you
I
mean
was
by that?
scared too.
What do you
What's
mean
that?
women are? Let's elaborate because I think that like that's really powerful. What do you
Yeah.
mean by women are suffering because you're afraid to work on your sales skills?
So I'll give you an example of my light bulb moment when I'm on the phone with Susan and she's telling me her doctor just diagnosed her with osteoporosis and we're having a conversation and I'm trying to comfort her and be her friend in that moment and just tell her how we've helped so many women, overcome their bone mineral density issues and like I believe in you, Susan, like we're going to be able to help you. You're going to be around, for your grandkids. And then at the end of the call, Susan tells me, you know what? I think I'm just going to keep going on my daily walks and I'm going to work out from home and I'm going to figure this out on my own because I can't really afford this right now. And I hang up the phone with Susan and I think, what is Susan's future going to look like?
Yeah.
If she continues down the path she's already on, it's not going to stay the same. She's not just going to, have osteoporosis and go on with her day. It's going to get worse. She's going to be washing the dishes one morning, doing her normal routine. She's going to fall. She's going to break a hip. She's going to end up in a hospital bed. And more than likely, her eldest daughter is going to be at the side of that bed, in tears because her mom's in pain. Her mom might never walk again. This might be the end for her mom. Her mom's not going to be there to see her grandkids be born. And the worst part about this equation is that the cycle will continue with that eldest daughter too, because she's going to see what her mom did. She's going to pour every ounce of care into the people around her, her community, her spouse, her kids, her career. And she's going to end up in that hospital bed too. Might be 30 years from now, but the cycle will continue. If my sales skills don't improve to the point that I can strip away that woman's limiting beliefs and change the generational cycles for her and her family.
Yeah, and that's incredibly powerful. I can't emphasize enough how important that statement is. Like, because how many trainers are like, I just don't like feeling salesy, and it's like, one, you won't be in this industry for very long, and if you love this job, you have to be able to sell. Two, most importantly, and what should be the most meaningful for you is exactly what you said. You're because it's not somebody said this to me once. It's fuck, I'm gonna screw this up. My friend Andy McCloy said this and it like hit me like a bag of bricks. It was when people say like I don't like being salesy, it is fear disguised as virtue. It is
Mm.
it is fear disguised as virtue. They're really scared. Maybe they have a low self-belief that they're worth it. Maybe they are afraid of rejection, but it's really fear disguised as, well, I just don't want to be pushy. I just don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be a douchey, salesy, sleazy person. When you can understand that, like, that's really a smokescreen that you're just scared and it's not a virtue, and that actually that unwillingness to go there is hurting people that you say you care about, that's probably the thing that you realized.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful right there.
Um, so with that, how did you like, how do you flip that switch? You know, because obviously you can't just decide, maybe you can just decide that I'm going to be good at sales now. How do you flip that switch? Like, how do you get better? The confidence, the conviction, the frame, like, how do you get better?
It's just simply getting the reps in, I think. Like for me, just starting off when you get into, the world of owning a gym, I don't think we realize how many freaking phone calls we're gonna have to make. Like when you start off, you're just like, oh, I'm gonna be like helping people lift weights and getting in the best shape of my life too. And next thing you know, you're like, wait a minute, I'm just making phone calls all day. Um, but you realize that your call to impact, it just changes. Like as you grow through different stages of business, you have to learn new skills or you're going to be stuck in the same place. Um, so for me, I think it's just having the beginner's mindset, which we can struggle with as athletes because we got really good at something once. And there was a really great quote actually from Ann Malum, the founder of Solid
Yeah.
Core, at the conference over the weekend. She scaled her Pilates studio to over 100 locations. And really her quote was, no one tells you when you find your purpose once in life, you're gonna have to find it again. So I say that to say I found my purpose as this, basketball player, athlete, really good at it, really loved it. And then that world ended, and I had to pick it all up again and find something new that I was going to do with my life and still live a purpose-driven existence on this earth. So I say all that to say just having the willingness to start from scratch again and think back to the amount of layups, the amount of mic and drills you had to do at the beginning to get good at making a layup, the amount of phone calls you're going to have to do where someone's going to tell you to fuck off, it's just going to happen, right? So being willing to work through that uncomfortability, knowing that probably won't ever be excited to make the calls. Like you're not going to be, unless if you totally, change your personality and all that, but it's just something that you have to do. You have to grind through the practices to get to the games, to get to the championships.
I love that. I love the sports analogy because I think a lot of people that get into this industry at least once were athletes. I want to wrap this up with like, I always like tactics and being super tangible and tactical. What is the score? What is the ideal scorecard in terms of like what does good look like for a sales rep? And so, for example, what standard do you hold yourself to? Like, hey, 80% of my calls are gonna buy. That's the standard that I hold myself to. That's kind of the standard that I hold myself to and that we expect of my team. But what would you say like because you can calibrate off of that, right? Let's get a baseline. Where are you now? If you're closing 40% of people in your gym, you got to get to 80%. And then how could they do that? So what would the standard be that you would recommend somebody set for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pulling up our scorecard right now to give you the exact data and numbers. And over Q2 of this year, I had the fun next step of getting to train my facility leader to
Awesome.
sell for us. So that's the next fun stage that once you develop the skills, now you become the teacher, which is really fun. And then once you've become uncomfortable, making all those calls and dials, you get to sit on the beach and have your facility leader make 3 sales in a day, which happened last weekend. So that's a fun feeling, which never would have happened if I didn't pick up the phone and decide that I was okay being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but back to your direct question. So what we look for and the standard we hold ourselves to is we're trying to convert to get 40% of the leads on a phone call conversation, right? So this is mainly leads coming through Facebook ads, Google, website walk-ins, the whole deal, the whole marketing glove. So we're trying to get 40%. This past month, we got 47. So we overachieved a little bit there, which is always great to see. Then from the phone call to booking a roadmap, we're a little more strict in this. We're at 40% as well. I always guide Ethan. I would rather have him bring in people who are a good quality fit. Like, let's make sure they're qualified before we invite them in. Let's be a little bit more of the gatekeepers in that process. So we're looking at 40% there. And then once the person's in the door, we're expected 80% or more conversion. So
Yeah.
if they're coming in for that in-person conversation, 80% or more, we were at 95% for the month of July. So our facility leader, Ethan, was absolutely freaking crushing it when people were in our door. Um, Overall conversion, let's see, lead to members. So we're looking at 15% there. So we were at 18
Yeah.
for the last month. So just setting those standards, whatever they are, I think is the key, especially when you're expecting somebody else to do it for you, one of your team members. And then we can always peel back the layers if he needs additional training, if he needs help at one specific stage of this funnel, we can tease that out and we can work on it and we can role play and we can make sure that he's feeling confident.
Awesome. You've had a lot of great one-liners and just things to that I hope people take away from them this with. But is there anything you want to, put a bow on this with? Maybe specifically speaking to the female fitness professional that is in charge of selling.
Yeah, I'm gonna close my notes here and speak from the heart. There needs to be more of us. That's it. Like, I want it to become more of the norm that there's more of us in the industry. We are serving a majority of women, so we're essentially speaking to ourselves. We're speaking to our moms a lot of the times. So I like to put myself in, I'm talking to my mom, I'm talking to my grandma. Like, what would I want them to do? What decision would I want them to make in this moment? So I want to look back and, 5 years from now, and I have more women who I can talk to about sales and we can get excited and we can share stats. So I need you here. The world needs you here. We need you making this impact in this field and showing women that strength training is for us, that sales is for us. So come on out, show yourself. Where are you at?
Great. Rachel, this was awesome. Thank you so much. If anybody wanted to reach out and maybe, I know you've trained some people in the past, maybe contact you, work with you, or whatever, maybe just say thank you. How can they do that?
Yeah, I would love to connect. Instagram, you can find me. It's spelled just like my name, so raise dot the dot bar, RAYS dot the dot bar. So find me on Instagram and we'll go from there.
Hell yeah. All right, Rachel, thank you so much. And those listening, make sure you like, subscribe, leave comments, do all that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.